Good evening and welcome to Views with Joyce Waddell. I want to thank you for joining us this evening. Our guest is Myra Bynum, and our topic for tonight is avoiding addiction. You know, sometimes people can be addicted and not even know what's happening to them. Like, a lot of people go to doctors and they take pills, they get prescriptions, Oxycontin, they get pills, Xanax. They're prescription drugs that come in bottles like this. And people take them for pain, take them for anxiety, for depression, and they don't know that these same drugs, they're prescription drugs. They come from a drugstore, but yet you can become addicted from them.
Yes.
So there are many ways that people can become addicted. Sometimes it's an innocence that happens, and often it's an innocence. But it's something that progresses and continues to plague the body until it's something that's habit forming and something that you cannot do without. So they can come from the drugstore. It doesn't have to come off the street. So Myra, how, and usually it will say here, if medication upsets your stomach, may cause drowsiness, and not only this, people will get medications like this and continuously have them filled because they are serving a physical need, an emotional need. So it doesn't always have to come from the streets. So how can purposeful medication prescribed become an addictive process for people?
Well, some people can, I'm not an expert, however, from my experience, some people will share their medications, particularly prescription medications. People will share and say, well, this worked for me, why don't you try it? Not realizing that or taking those precautionary measures that are on the bottle, like may cause drowsiness, don't take repeatedly.
Do not refill, and then sometimes if they take this off, it says do not refill, they take it to a druggist, they don't pay attention, and they fill it anyway. And the person has it. Or the person said, I must have this medication, and it's filled. And that's one of the known ways that people become addicted, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
So as you tell your story, the worst thing that can ever happen to you, that did ever happen to you on your journey, wasn't being arrested, was it? It wasn't being in jail. You know, evidently, they say jail is a revolving door. It was a revolving door for you, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, the consequence was not bad enough for me at that time to not want to go back.
So maybe that's why people don't care.
Some people don't. They don't care about that particular consequence. It's not bad enough for them.
To be arrested 7 times was not bad enough, was it?
Oh, I was arrested more than 7. I was arrested a lot more than 7 times.
Well, you should have known the system as smart as you are to avoid it.
I didn't care at that time. I was well into active addiction, not to prescription medications, but at that time I was smoking marijuana, I was drinking alcohol, I was smoking crack cocaine, I was snorting cocaine. So at that time, jail, I would get somebody to bond me out. So it didn't matter.
Well, evidently, you had some kind of, your biological system was able to handle that. Because what happens with a lot of people, the system can't handle it. And it will kill them.
Drugs are very, very dangerous. Particularly now, I tell a lot of people, I've been clean and sober for 13 years. I would be afraid to do drugs today because I just wouldn't trust it. All the impurities that are in them, all the prescription medications that are out now that are so very dangerous, I would be afraid.
Now, Myra, the lowest, often it is said that for people, and I'm reading somebody else's story here, a gentleman says the thing that happened to him that made him change, he got as low as he could get. But that didn't happen to you.
They talk about reaching a bottom. I think being in prison, that last time, that was my bottom.
Did they beat you up in prison?
No, I stayed away from those people. That was a learning lesson for me. Those 9 months that I stayed in prison the last time kept me from ever wanting to go back. And then a lot of people say never. What I say is I don't ever want to go back. As long as I keep going forward, I'm doing well.
Forward forever and backward never.
There you go. I like that. I like that. Yeah.
During the election. But Myra, there was something during that journey. If you had been arrested over 10 times, there was something that caused you to go to the very bottom and change.
Well, I can recall an instance when I was in prison. You know, they have the prison ministries coming in and they sing and they pray and they do all those things. But I just asked God at that time to remove the desire from me, and I never looked back.
So you were converted in prison?
I guess you can say that. You always have a will. You know, God gives you freedom of choice. You have a choice. Again, you can either go back or you can go forward. I choose to go forward.
And you had children at that time?
Yes, I did. Luckily, my children didn't go in the system. They were both with my mother.
Okay, so you had somebody to keep them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would have gone in foster care.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My mother actually kept foster children. Mine weren't foster children. They were her grandchildren, but she had additional children in her home at that time.
So you were lucky in a lot of ways.
I was lucky in a lot of ways.
You had somebody to enable you then.
No, my mother did not enable me. I was put out of the house too many times. And this started as a teenager, and I guess I can stress that part of my journey. You know, I started getting high when I was in junior high school. I was 13 when I smoked my first joint.
And do you remember where you got that first joint from when you smoked it in junior high? Somebody gave you, did you buy it from somebody?
No, it was offered to me. You know, they were smoking a joint and they asked me, did I want some?
And this was in the school?
It was in the summertime. It was up at like the summer rec. It was at the pool in the summer. And some of the older kids, they were smoking weed, and so I decided I would try it too. And so and from there it progressed. And I can talk about some of the bad things that happened at my high school graduation. Now, mind you, I had a room assignment at Hampton University, and I had offers from several other colleges. You know, I never got bad grades. I didn't come from a bad family.
You had good grades.
You know,
you were an honor student in school.
I was, you know, all those things. However, I wrecked my car a week before graduation, and I had the accident because I was taking this older person to the liquor store to buy alcohol for us because we were going to have this big party, and I wrecked my car.
And you had a car in high school?
Yeah, I did. Again, I can't tell that story that, you know, I came from you know, we lived in the projects, and
you didn't live in the projects?
No, I did not. And so, however, but because of my associations and because of the choices that I made,
you were influenced by other people, and you followed the path that they wanted you to follow.
And
did you want to be popular? Did you want to be with the in crowd?
You know, I really don't. Now at this, you know, I'm 47 years old. Those memories those memories don't come as easily as they used to. However, I can say that I've never been necessarily a follower. So I would have to say that I made those decisions on my own. They were bad decisions. But I can't say I was necessarily influenced. Now, you know, there's always a hype crowd in high school and you know, the smart crowd. Well, I was able to fit in both of those environments, right? Because I was in classes with the honor roll students or the college-bound students.
AP classes.
Exactly. I was in those classes and I did well. I excelled. As a matter of fact, my physics class, I was the only female and the only black in that class.
In physics class.
Exactly.
So you had
high school.
You had a bright future ahead of you.
I did. Again, but it's because of the choices that I made, because of the influence of the drugs and the alcohol that I was doing even back then.
It was something about that alcohol that you liked.
Exactly. It medicated the pain. It made me feel good at that time. So that's why, and I continued. So instead of going to college like I should have, I told my mother I didn't want her. We had a big falling out at my graduation, and I told her that I didn't want her to do anything for me, and I joined the Navy. Worst decision probably I've ever made in my life.
Well, the Navy would have sent you to college.
Well, I did take I was in the Navy for 6 years, so I did take some college classes while I was in the Navy. I got married, I had a son, I did all those things, but after an overseas tour, I came home and...
Where was your tour overseas?
I went to Iceland.
Oh, okay.
Keflavik, Iceland.
There wasn't a war going on at the time?
No. I did get a ribbon for, I think, Persian Gulf War.
You weren't in the Persian Gulf War, were you?
No, I was just in service during that time.
During the time, okay.
And so, so I was introduced to cocaine, or crack cocaine, or it wasn't crack back then. We were cooking up powdered cocaine when I came back from overseas after.
Did you do drugs while you were in the Navy?
Not cocaine, no. Alcohol was the drug of choice when I was in the Navy.
And everybody
I drank a lot.
And everybody on the ship drank a lot?
Everybody drank a lot, yeah.
But
it was acceptable. Alcohol is always the acceptable.
Evidently, you stayed sick a lot, or somebody stayed sick a lot. If you're drinking all the time.
We just drank and drank and drank and drank. I drank a lot.
Well, somebody stayed sick all the time, didn't they?
Well, it depends on your tolerance level. I wasn't sick, so
you were feeling good.
Exactly.
Artists, we're talking about avoiding addiction. As we talk about Myra Bynum, talk with Myra Bynum, and she shares her story, avoiding addiction. And there are many ways that you can avoid addiction. And one of the best ways is to look at the people that you associate with. And when you see them going in the wrong direction, choose other friends. And from reading excerpts from this article, it says, know how to say no. It isn't often easy. It's not popular. Know when to say no, and always say no. So we're going to come back as Myra continues to share her story and talks about avoidance. Not only can you avoid it, the people around you can avoid it. The fastest growing population for addiction now are older people. Those senior citizens who have retired, and now they're beginning to choose something different. They're living longer. They're associating and going out with the wrong crowd. That's the biggest population. How can they avoid falling into addiction trap? And we're going to pause for a moment and hear the Voices for Christ.
Smoke it, bring it right back. But wait a minute, boys. Now on second thought, I just try and go make some money. Need 20 just for the Chevy, got the live. Come on, come on. Get up. I'm doing it. Here we go. Come on. Wait a minute. Like that. I'm considered as a yo, people, let me do it like this. Smoke by myself, drink by myself, spin a little bit, got to hit the group, every time I make something. Carolina style, wait, see in the south, please say. Short. Wait a minute, bring it back. Hey, one more time. And my lady. Every lady. Where my ladies at? I believe that's me. Hey, ladies, I believe that's me. I gotta get your body with chrome pipe, a tiny level, and two levels just in case and more than a get. Wait, but that's not all. We in the real shed, we see something, my body's back, and shook hands with old friends from other 30 hours. Wait a minute. See you in the set. Here we go. Hold on.
They ain't crumb.
I gotta make sure they feeling it.
They ain't crumb. I need to know who gonna get crumb. I need you to come to the front or to the stage. I know. Oh, he said no. But see, we don't. Too many people. Too many people.
That's all right. That's all right. I like you just the way you are.
See my preference. Rico. Rico. I think we're ready now. Now what did you say?
Okay, bring it back now.
Artists, we're continuing to talk about addiction and avoiding addiction. And that's our topic for tonight, avoiding addiction. We're focusing on many of our seniors who are addicted to prescription drugs. And not only that, they're living longer and experiencing more social activities than before, and really associating with a lot of younger people. And when they walk down the street or when they're in parties and someone gives them a little bag, they don't know what this little bag is. And sometimes they'll take this little bag and then they'll get arrested for it. Can you get arrested for having a little bag?
Not a little bag of tea, but you can get arrested for having, a little bag. You know, the police might actually suspect that this is some drugs if you had it in your car or something like that, and you could get arrested.
And
for
that
it.
says drugs.
They test it and do all
They
that.
may not even test it.
They might. Yeah, we don't trust little baggies with little stuff in there like that.
So had you ever thought about going into law enforcement as a result of what happened to you?
Yeah.
No.
I got arrested in what city? A little city here in North Carolina, and the loss prevention guy said if I ever got my life together to come back and work in loss prevention. So I guess so.
But did you contact them after you got your
I did not.
Well, one thing you have going for you, you come from a good family,
I do.
and you have you're very intelligent, you have a great aptitude, and you have a willingness to change. You're a smart person.
That's
so,
one of.
So how would you get a smart person like you get trapped up in such foolishness like that?
Well, it happens to the best of us, I guess. Again, it's the choices that you make. You know, a lot of people talk about how addiction is hereditary and you have to have certain genes, but a lot of it is will. You know, it's your will, and you make these choices, good or bad, and then they lead you down whichever path that you choose.
Now, as you see more and more young people who are being addicted and more young people who are going to prison, why don't they do more with rehabilitation? You know, the prison is a system that's very lucrative. You can make a lot of money investing in prisons.
Oh, absolutely.
And there are a lot of private prisons.
Yeah.
And I've met many people who run in halfway houses who are making big dollars. They're very successful.
Mm-hmm.
And many of them have become rich.
Yes.
So the system exists for some reason, or someone has taken advantage of a system that's in place, and you see it more and more. At 13 years old, I would have never dreamed that a 13-year-old would be smoking marijuana. You didn't do crack at 13, did you?
No, just marijuana.
But that's a drug, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's an illegal drug, isn't it?
And it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Evidently, I would say, as a counselor, it's the people that you're associated with and that you wanted to be popular and that you wanted to be with an in crowd.
I guess that would
Fit your category.
Yeah, I guess in a way it fit my category, not necessarily with the crowd that I went to classes with, but the crowd that I associated with after school, or I would go to other neighborhoods and hang out with those kids.
Maybe you have had too much leisure time. Did you play sports?
I was a cheerleader. I was a cheerleader and I ran track in junior high. So yeah, it's about choices that you make, and you have to be willing to deal with the consequence of that choice.
Now, how many of the people who came along with you and were in a similar situation with you are alive today or have life sentences? Can you get a life sentence for what you've done? No.
Not for what I've done, but I do know several young, very young men who have federal life sentences for dealing drugs.
Did you deal drugs? Some. It goes hand in hand. Evidently goes hand in
You
hand.
can't self-incriminate now at this point.
Okay. So
I associated with a lot of people who did deal drugs, and
it must have been fun to be around them because they were big time.
they had a lot of money.
and everybody looked up to them.
You know, they had, and money is an addiction too. When I go in the jails and I talk to these women, I tell them, don't separate yourself from listening to 12-step, what a 12-step program talks about, because you could be addicted to anything, whatever yours is, because there has to be something that got you here. We're in the jail now. We're in the jail. We're in a pod. There's, 20 women, and each one of them has something that led them to this place, whether it be drugs, whether it be money, whether it be men.
Can men lead them to jail?
Absolutely.
Have a jail sentence?
You know how many women are doing federal sentences now because they were with a man that was selling dope, and he gave the dope to her in the car, and she said it was hers, so she got the charge. That happens a lot.
And you went scot-free.
That happens a lot. Or if you won't, I mean, there's so much, but we're talking about avoidance. So what you can do is make good choices. Know that you do have a choice. Be able to say no. Be able to look beyond that first joint or that first drink or that first pill, and see where your life is going to go if you make that bad choice.
Now, did you, in school, they talked about drugs and avoidance, didn't they? Didn't you have classes in health?
Did we have
Didn't you have the DARE
I
program?
think it was more. No, not when I remember now.
Did they talk about DARE?
I'm
Didn't they talk about
47.
didn't they talk about avoidance?
I think the big thing back then was alcohol. It wasn't so much the drugs now.
People don't, but then in school they don't pay attention to what they're taught.
I mean, we weren't paying attention to that. We weren't paying attention.
You couldn't make the connection between what you were taught because you had not had the experience yet.
Well, you couldn't see beyond that choice that you make. You have to be able to see beyond that. You have to see yourself in college. You have to be able to see yourself getting a good job. You don't want to see yourself, well, if I take this first drug, then I'm going to want more drugs, then I'm going to commit some kind of crime to get these drugs, then I'm going to go to jail, then I may go to prison.
Nobody believes that, do they?
Right.
Because they're caught up in the moment in what's happening then.
Absolutely.
And so our topic for tonight is avoidance. And the biggest thing that you say is to think about the choices that you make. How long do they have to make the choices when they're standing there and they're offered something and somebody gives them this little bag?
Well, hopefully they've been introduced to, like you said, either they've seen it in school, or they've seen it on TV, or they've seen it on Facebook, or they've seen it on the internet, or they've seen it in their neighborhood.
We're talking about, what about the older women now?
Well, even the seniors.
The seniors living longer now, and they're associating, going out, they're associating with a lot of, because they're living longer, they're associating with a lot of younger men who are much younger than they are. And many of them are getting caught up in that trap because they're making, even though they are older, I'm talking about 50, 60, they're older, but they're making the bad choices. They didn't know anything about it when they were growing up. They didn't know anything about it, their peer group.
And then the important thing there is education, like what we're doing now, educating people or educating yourself, again, on what's going on in your environment. You know, what are these drugs? I mean, I can see even some of the senior citizens who have prescription drugs themselves and being influenced to maybe, can you go and get those pills for me? You know, my back hurts. You know, can you help me out? I don't, you know what I mean? That type of thing. I can see that influence happening too. So again, you have to educate yourself and be aware and have an awareness of what's going on around in your surrounding.
Myra, now how many of these people that you know are dead? Any of them? They still living?
That were in my circle of
In your circle of
friends back then.
Some got to be dead.
Actually,
No, they still living?
there are several that are dead. Yeah.
As a result of the way, their lifestyle, the way they
Absolutely.
lived.
Yes. Yes. There are several that are dead. There are several that are still out there in active addiction. There are several that are in prison. And there are several like me who are living productive lives now.
And have turned their lives around.
Exactly.
Did you ever think when you were in jail that you would ever turn your life around, that you would ever get a bachelor's degree, that you would ever be looking forward to getting your doctorate? Are you considered far ahead ever?
I could see myself not being in jail anymore. I knew that that's not what I was supposed to be doing. That was not.
Were you embarrassed when your parents came to see you?
My mother never came to see me. Again, I told you, my mother practiced tough love throughout my entire, she never came to see me. She never visited me. She never sent me money. She never did any of those things.
She was
so
not
all of that
able-
trouble
she
that
was-
I got, no. All of that I got into myself.
And you got out yourself.
And exactly.
Well, your husband, did he help you to get out? Did he help you to see a better life?
My ex-husband, no. My ex-husband is who introduced me to the cocaine when I came back from overseas. And actually we separated, and he went back to Chicago and I came back to North Carolina. So no, he wasn't the positive influence, unfortunately. He was not.
But he was not addicted to it like you? Not that you know of?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of.
Well, Myra, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. You've been sought after as a speaker in so many different places. You told your story in Pride magazine. You told your story in the Charlotte Observer. And they shared your story, and people were, I know they were calling you and telling you, is this you?
They were. Again, most people, unless I tell my story, people don't know my story.
They would never put it together, not ever.
No. But I'm not ashamed to tell it, because hopefully in the telling of my story, I can help somebody else. I can keep someone from going down that same path. They can avoid the addictive behaviors, the addictive lifestyle. They can avoid all of that.
But thank you for being with us, and thank you for
Thank you.
sharing your positive influence.